I recently did I called it a review of Train Sim World 4, but I have received some feedback, quite fairly, if I'm honest, that it wasn't really a true review. It was just sort of a loosely based, vague discussion about my thoughts of the game. And so I thought today I would collect my thoughts now that I've been settling down into Train Sim World 4, allow the initial anger to sort of simmer down and get more integrated into my other beliefs and structure everything better into a proper review. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. We're going to have a look at my thoughts of Train Sim World 4. It's structured by routes, so you got the 4 routes in the deluxe edition, I believe they've called it, and also the 2 extra locomotives. But of course this still applies to standard edition, just ignore Ricer Dresden, Flying Scotsman, and the Seaman's Vectron. I'll also be offering some overall thoughts right at the end, and doing valuations for each of the items of content individually. So, something to note before we get started, I'm not considering what I perceive as the developer Dovetail Games dodgy business practices. I'm leaving that aside for this. I'm just judging the game and the game only. Of course, as a good consumer, you should consider the morals and ethics of the people you're buying from, and I do encourage you to research a bit more on that, either from me or from others, because they have done some pretty shady things, and chances are there will be a Train Sim World 5 next year, or at least 2 years' time, that you will need to purchase again, and Train Sim World 4 will become effectively abandonware. I'm also not considering any impacts this game has on previous games or previous DLC, or the impact previous DLC has on this game. I'm just reviewing this as if you are new to the franchise entirely, with nothing except the base game. And of course, if you're not new to the franchise and you have other stuff that can layer in, just keep that in the back of your mind and factor that in yourself. So let's get started. The East Coast Mainline, the gameplay in this is slightly boring. You can do express runs which are about a half hour long, but you don't stop at all, so you just rocket the push to start, very simple Class 801 up to 125, and you more or less leave it there. There's a little bit of, slow down, speed up here and there, but for the most part, you're just managing a speed, looking at a speedo. You can, of course, do other runs, which are closer to 45 minutes to just shy of an hour, with some stops in between. They're more interesting because there's more stuff to do. You've got to judge when to start your braking curves. But overall, I'd still say the experience is underwhelming on the gameplay front. It is also completely linear. There are no branches or anything like that to make any of the service patterns more interesting. It's just one route. More or less everything does more or less all of the route. So there's no escaping that. In terms of the realism, the route is still quite buggy, even after a few rounds of post-release patching. The OHLE, which is a new feature, I believe is too thick. I believe that subtracts from the experience. And there are some graphical and texture, ultimately rendering issues, like PISs not working properly, the cab display being too dark, too dim, you can hardly read it, and intercarriage gangways and cabling not being properly connected, and they're all quite sloppy bugs, and I'm surprised this route was allowed to release in its current state, if I'm being quite frank. And as such, I don't think this route is very good value for money. I think you should, if this is what you're really interested in, I think you should hold back and wait until there's a sale. The pros of the route, it does introduce the 800, 801, 802, the intercity express trains, that class of Hitachi E300. Not E300, are they? The Hitachi AT300, that's what it is. And it does introduce the East Coast Main Line, albeit not parts that were super highly requested and really not that interesting. And of course the cons are it's buggy and not very fun, in my opinion. I have read lots of stories of people who thoroughly enjoy this route, but I can only speak on my own experience, and it hasn't been great. Next, we have the Flying Scotsman 60103. This is the only in deluxe and special editions, not standard edition, and it, in the base game, only layers into the East Coast Mainline. And it does add quite a lot to that. It's certainly a much more hands-on driving experience, a much more challenging experience to the, stop-start zoomer stuff. You really have to fight up gradients and fight down gradients. If you watch my last video, you will see that very clearly. It's a good bash. It's a pretty nicely modelled steam locomotive. The support coach is incorrect, as far as I'm aware, but other than that, this is fairly well made, and they've done a decent job modelling it and modelling the physics and stuff. So I'm deeming it a good value for money. Not fantastic, not excellent, just good for now. Pros, it expands the Steam collection, shows Dovetail still have the capability to make good Steam content, and it is certainly better than the LMS Jubilee. The cons, there's not as much usage in the timetable as I would like. I would have much preferred it if there were a lot more services, considering there's, this isn't, we're paying money for this. I would expect to be able to get decent usage for it. And of course, Dovetail is sort of just leaning towards, oh, well, you can throw it down and use it in free mode whenever you like. But, some people like a little bit of realism and not just plonking anything down and running it as you wish. Alright, now the Antelope Valley Line. This is the American installment of this game. Personally, I don't find the gameplay overly engaging. The run times are very long. We're talking 2 hours for an end-to-end run. And because of that, Dovetail Games, the developers, have actually split the runs in half, so they've set them as part 1 and part 2, which I'm not a huge fan of, especially when there's a save feature, which, albeit, doesn't work super well. It's also a very small timetable. We're talking about less than 50 trains on the base game, or less than 50 revenue services. There are additional little non-revenue runs, but they're full end-to-end runs. There are only about 25 of them, and they inflate the timetable by splitting them up and doing this and that, but really there's 26 end-to-end runs. There's also a lack of rolling stock that would be applicable. We already, in previous versions of the game, have equipment that Metrolink use on this route, just in a different livery, and Dovetail have not been bothered to put them into this route, and that makes me think that they will come to this route in some form or another as payware down the line. Realism, outside of Los Angeles, it's not terrible, but LA itself feels wrong. It feels dead. It just doesn't capture the vibe in the same way that Dovetail have, with limited success, but some success, been able to capture other cities like London and Dresden, and other places like that. They just feel so dead and lifeless, and not that realistic. The rolling stock itself isn't bad. There are some minor issues here and there, but not terrible. So I give this a decent value for money. If you really like American freight, why not? If you're not super beyond American freight, probably this won't sway your opinion much. I don't foresee I'll play this route that much. Once new content arrives, it's just probably going to sit on the back burner, and I'll play it if someone requests it on a Viewers Choose Route stream. But other than that, I don't think I'll touch it really that much. Pros, we've got the new operator Metrolink, and we got stuff in Southern California, which, I'm always happy to see new regions in the game, but I guess this leads to the con. It's not a really logical choice of route. It's a highly restricted timetable, and there's no freight unless you have Train Sim World 3 at least. and extra freight doesn't come until you spend more money on other routes like Sherman Hill and other additional loco packs and whatnot, which in themselves are rip-offs, but I won't get into that. So yeah, overall, it's not a fantastic route, but equally it's not terrible. Vorarlberg, now this one is pretty terrible. The gameplay is fairly engaging, granted. It's an interesting route, it's got a non-linear structure. We've sort of got a triangular kind of, or not really a triangle, but we've got 3 branches that all pivot around the centre. There's the really cool line into Lindau. But the scenery is quite bad. I know they've tried their hardest for the LiDAR, the actual terrain, and the terrain isn't terrible, I'll give them that, but the stuff on the terrain is. The trees have no shadows from far away, and that is something you can slightly fix on PC if you've got a powerful enough PC, but on console you're fucked. There's no way you can change that. Personally, I think everything is a bit oversaturated. The grass is very green, leaves are very orange, things are sort of all over the place with the colours. And it's too bright. I can hardly see gauges and instruments in the cab. It's just, it's constantly midday in the middle of summer, even when it's, winter and 9 a.m. On top of that, the audio is completely wrong. Dovetail themselves are very open to admit that. They couldn't get audio recordings for this route, which in my eyes should be an instant, rethink. Should we actually go forward with this? No. Because it's wrong. This is marketing itself as the cutting edge of simulation technology, and it's wrong. They copied a very different sounding train that has very different audio, and they've just pasted it in here as a stopgap until we can arrange other recording trips, but they haven't committed properly to getting additional audio, and even if they did, I wouldn't trust them personally. And for that reason, I've given this a bad value for money. Even if you're really looking forward to it, I was really looking forward to this route, and I really don't touch it, because it's, as Tarangus, a train spotter from Tarangus says, and to quote him more or less, and I agree with this, every time I play it, something else wrong comes up. There's just, it's not a great route. I was looking forward to it. I was really excited. This was the one that I thought I was going to enjoy the most, and it's not. It's the one I enjoyed the least. On the pros, though, it is the first Austrian route, and hopefully that bodes well for the future with, diversification of the routes. But yeah, the con, it's got awful scenery and awful sounds, which is a huge shame. Rice Dresden, this is for special edition only, not special edition, deluxe and special editions only. This is an upgrade of a previous route that was already in the game. In terms of the gameplay, there's no difference between the gameplay on this route and in the previous iterations, so of course if you already own it, if you already own this route, you get the upgrade for free. But honestly, I don't see this as an upgrade. I see this as a downgrade. I would much rather play the Train Sim World 2 version of this route. I think they've somehow managed to make this version worse. Obviously, we've got the same rolling stock, which is fantastic. There's a huge range of rolling stock by default on this without needing additional purchases, but if you do have those additional layers, it makes it even better on that front. Realism-wise, the OHLE and the scenery is somehow worse than the original. I'm not sure if that's the lighting exacerbating problems, but I don't like it. I prefer the original, and thus I don't give it that great value for money. But of course, a lot of people will get this upgrade for free anyway, so, can't really complain there. Although maybe you can, if it's worse than the original. It's a free upgrade, but it's like a free downgrade. But so the pros are, I guess, the new lighting engine, which is slightly nicer, but not a huge deal. I never complained about the Train Sim World 2 lighting. It wasn't an issue. I mean, the new stuff is a bit nicer, but it's caused a lot of problems. Don't get me wrong. And the fog, I guess, it's all right. It's not a reason to go out and buy it. And the cons is worse than the original. In my humble opinion, of course, some people have enjoyed this route. Personally, I haven't. And that's an opinion, a sentiment that I see echoed quite a lot. And the final piece of content is the Seaman Vectron. This is my favourite thing in the game, in Trains in Mode 4. This is, again, only for Deluxe and Special Editions, not for Standard, but it is so fantastic. It adds a lot to the Rice to Dresden route. There's lots of usage on all kinds of different runs, predominantly freight, but there is a little bit of passenger stuff on the side. It's very realistic. It's a shame we can't go through the electrical room in the middle, but that seems to be a common trend with Dovetail that I think we're just going to have to accept, unfortunately. But other than that, it's a great train. It's good value for money. No one I haven't really seen anyone seriously complain about it, so there's that, which is rare for a Dovetail Games product. That is very rare, and it is quite rare at the moment for me to be praising Dovetail Games so outwardly. Pros, the obvious one here is that it adds the Vectron family, which is the last major electric loco family. You know, we've had the Trax, we've had the Euro Sprinter, now we have the Vectron. Cons, we've only got one slightly obscure livery. Would have been nice to have this in Traffic Red, but, you know, I'm sure someone will do that in the editor. I'm sure there'll be a dot pack reskin that comes out, and if you're on console, I'm sure there's something in the Creators Club already. In fact, there is. I've already made a video on it. That sticks this into s-bahn Traffic Red livery. So yeah, this is a great thing, and this is the saving grace of the game. That said, though, I still don't think this game is worth the money. Honestly, truly, my consumer advice at the moment, if you choose to follow it, if you choose to trust me, is not to buy this game until a significant discount comes out. Whether that will be in a Halloween sale, if they do one, probably not, because it's so close after release. Or if there's a Christmas sale, if you join my Discord server, I have a sort of channel that's set up to get pings in some regard whenever there's a sale. So you can join that, and I'll notify everyone about that at the time. But in overall, the game is still very unpolished. A lot of the upgrades haven't actually been released yet, and a few of the upgrades I don't think are upgrades. Like a lot of the UI stuff as well that they've done, I don't like. I prefer the old UI, which, you know, could just be nostalgia, I guess. But it's only the Trains in Mod 3 is only a year old, so I doubt that's the case. But yeah, that's my overall evaluation of Trains in Mod 4. I hope this review has been more useful than the last one. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great day. Goodbye.